Hello, my name is Paul Dwyer, CEO of CyberRisk International, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about cybersecurity versus cyber risk management. Our organization is an award-winning cyber risk advisory firm, and we're based in Dublin, Ireland. More about that later. Before I begin, I'd like to agree off some basic terminology before we begin to explain the more intricate parts around cyber risk management. Firstly, what is a vulnerability? Well, a vulnerability is a weakness, usually in the misconfiguration or design flaw in a system. What is a threat? Well, a threat means potentially exploiting that vulnerability. What is a risk? Well, a risk is a perceived threat. What does the term cyber mean? The term cyber means anything with the origins in the internet or computer-based. And finally, what does the term secure mean? The term secure actually means free from risk. And that leads us into our next definition, which is when we talk about cyber risk management. Because we believe the term cyber security is actually a bit of an oxymoron, i.e. a contradiction in terms, because how can you utilize everything that is internet-based, technology-based, but yet be free from risk? It's almost an impossible task. Therefore, we believe the answer lies in using and utilizing and leveraging established risk management techniques in combination with cyber security protocols. Now, from a board's perspective, leading a business, the most important thing is to get their cyber strategy aligned with their business strategy. And these days, that's a broad and holistic challenge, because not too long ago, anything to do with IT security or cybersecurity was all siloed within IT cybersecurity controls. But now we all appreciate it's far wider than that. Cybersecurity, risk management, compliance, all of these areas now holistically affect a business. It covers areas such as cyber risk management and oversight, threat intelligence and collaboration, third-party vendor risk, for example, and of course instant response and recovery. Because what we're talking about here is gone are the days when it's about building castle walls and thinking nobody will ever be able to breach. It's inevitable breaches will happen, and the controls in place to be able to detect when incidents happen and be able to handle and recover from those incidents is just as important. So the challenge goes on, and the challenge is about taking that holistic view of the business, not just one department of the business, for example, IT. And that means understanding what are the priorities, where are the gaps, what do we have in place, what strengths are there, and what do we need in order to close any of those gaps. And by doing that, and by having that information, that management information, you can make informed decisions. And that helps you develop your cyber strategy, helps you develop a framework, helps you communicate the status to any third parties and key stakeholders, helps you enable the business, and of course, manage cyber risk. So how do you do this? Well, the first thing we need to do is establish and understand what our inherent cyber risk is. And I'm going to explain this term a little bit more, because it's become something now ubiquitous within a lot of frameworks and standards and guidance throughout the world. And how do we understand the inherent cyber risk? Well, that's the risk we have minus any mitigated controls, and it's based on the profile or the cyber DNA of the business. So let me explain. By that I mean, for example, what are the characteristics of the business? How many employees? How many mobile apps do they use? What countries do they operate in? And by understanding this, it should reflect the exact business model. It should take into account the unique characteristics of that business. It should be, as I say, calculated absent any compensated control. So this is literally about what makes up your business. How dependent are you on cyber? How many applications do you use? How much of your business is done online? All of those kinds of things helps us establish and understand the cyber DNA of the business. By understanding that metric and establishing that metric, we can then understand what is required in the business. And before we do that, we want to understand what does the business already have in place. So we do that by looking and assessing at the maturity of the existing controls in place. Firstly, to see if they're appropriate for the level of risk, and also to understand if there are any gaps, and maybe we're even overhitting some risk areas and investing in the wrong areas when it comes to cybersecurity and risk management. So by understanding what levels of controls are there, we can actually pick the proper appropriate controls. So selecting the specific controls that are required and the specific maturity of those. Because when we all think of controls, we understand that there's many different levels of those kind of controls. Some cost little to nothing to put in place, Some actually cost millions of dollars and euros to put in place. So it's very important that you're selecting not alone the appropriate control, but the appropriate maturity level of those controls that are going in place. And by doing that and comparing your inherent risk and your maturity in place, you're then able to establish what is your residual risk. And that is the risk that effectively is left over, the risk that you need to treat. But a little bit more about that as we go on. So let's look at this and let's summarize. Your inherent risk is the risk that exists absent of any controls. Your residual risk is the risk that exists after those controls have been applied. So that's what you should be concerned about. That's what you should be worried about, and that's what you should be treating. So again, let's look at a little bit deeper and a deeper dive in relation to inherent risk. What are the areas? What would I look at? Well, let's look at this statement here from the G7. That's the group of 7 countries. And they're calling out in their cyber fundamentals document, as too is the European Central Bank and many other respected organizations around the world, that the saying one size fits all approach no longer works. This isn't about doing a gap analysis. That's no longer good enough. You have to work out what is appropriate for your business model and your risk area. And it covers all these areas as we see here. We've broken it down into 5 domains for the purposes of understanding. But not alone understanding the key characteristics of your business that you can effectively put your hand on or understand, there's other external factors, geopolitics, cyber threats. So you should take into account external indicators and factors such as the geopolitics of the regions and countries that you work in, and indeed the geopolitics around the regions and countries of the key suppliers and business partners that you depend on, as well as, of course, cyber threat intelligence. Is your sector under specific attack? What are the threat actors? What is their potential? What is the potential impact? These are all key things that you should understand. Now, when looking at the maturity of your organization, again, this isn't a siloed approach. This is about understanding everything from the strategic level down, cyber risk management and oversight, all the way through to vendor dependency. You need to look at the business holistically, because let me tell you, the bad guys, the cyber threat actors, they look at your business holistically. They look for the weak points. They look how to get in, how to compromise a system or a process in order to carry out their nefarious objectives. So in summary, we can see here this very simple formula that is saying inherent risk minus the impact of your controls is your residual risk. And I often think that it's best to use an analogy or something like, for example, if you have different kinds of dogs, you'd have different kinds of controls in place, or different kinds of leads or harnesses depending on that. And that's exactly the same if you're dealing with your business. Depending on the risk level, depending on the profile and the personality of your business, depends on the type of controls you should have in place. So now let's look at it on what we call the CyberPrism inherent risk versus maturity chart. Here we can see, for example, that an organization has scored right in the middle and they have an inherent risk score, let's say in the range of between 400 and 600. That would indicate that the maturity level of their controls should be between evolving and advanced. And you can see this correspondence between your risk and your maturity is very important, because it means you're able to select the appropriate maturity levels of where you are. Now, one key point to remember, cyber security maturity is cumulative. You cannot just go out and buy innovative level controls, because those innovative level controls will be dependent on baseline controls. You need to build the foundations upwards. So you could be effectively wasting money or have a false sense of security based on just spending lots of money and investing in high-end controls, because actually when we see the genesis of most security breaches, it's those baseline controls that let organizations down. So when treating residual risk, let's look at our options. We have a number of different options. We can terminate or avoid the activity. We can mitigate with controls. We could insure or outsource that risk, or we could accept that risk with risk retention, or effectively we could distribute that out to multiple entities. So these are effectively the only risk treatment options an organization has when they've identified what those residual risk items are. Now, a little bit about Cyber Risk International and our award-winning solution, CyberPrism. CyberPrism is a cloud-based tool that we have developed in order to empower and enable our clients to be able to not alone assess the cyber risk they have, but actually to develop maturity programs and manage the risk associated with those things. It effectively very quickly brings you to a fast track process, which to the end user feels a bit like a survey, but the very complicated algorithms and feeds from geopolitics and cyber are going on in the background in order to evaluate your inherent risk around your business model. It then looks at the maturity level, carries out that complex comparison between the risk you have and what you have in place in order to identify any gaps, any holes, any areas that you need to address and deal with. And it does this through an amazingly easy to use interface, produces all the relevant reports, including a roadmap of maturity. And these things are actually mapped out then across to the top 10 international standards around the world, from the NIST framework, from EU GDPR, from SANS, from ISACA, even from the Department of Homeland Security around cyber resilience. So if you want to know more about CyberPrism, about CRI, please visit our website and you can find more informative videos teaching you these topics and explaining more about how CyberPrism and CRI itself can help you deal with the world of cyber threats. Thank you for your time, and I hope you've learned something in the last couple of minutes. Thank you.